This is David Andrew Wiebe Interviews and Music Business Podcast, episode 11 for May 17th, 2010. Joining me today is Daniel Guy Martin. How are you today, Dan?
I am totally delicious-orific.
Excellent. Daniel is a fantastic guitarist and, from what I hear, an excellent studio engineer as well. How would you describe your progression as an artist and a musician?
Oh, boy. That's a great question. I started playing guitar at a time when there was tragedy in my life. My father, he took his own life, actually, when I was 10. And a teacher at school started offering guitar lessons at noon hours, and I bothered my mother enough to get me a guitar finally, and I started taking those lessons. So for me, the guitar started out being a really healthy diversion from the pain that was going on in my family and, from the consequence of my father's death. The interesting thing now when I look back is it started out being a healthy diversion, and then it became kind of all about, I will show the world how great I am. So it became not so healthy because I still had some really big self-esteem issues, right, that had developed.
Yeah.
And the guitar for me became my identity almost. The better that I could play, the more I felt okay about myself, and the more I thought others would also feel okay about me. And I'm glad to say that now, let's see, I've been playing guitar for 37 years, and now I'm at a place where I understand that my identity is not my music or how able I am on my instrument. My identity is really about who I am and what I do in the world and how I treat my family, how I show up to serve my friends, my church, and that my guitar is a means to share myself and my heart with others.
Talk about some of your musical influences.
Oh, cool. Well, one of my early influences, and still is on the top, really, is Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin. And I started trying to play his guitar lines when I was about 11 or 12. I was pretty young. And I wasn't taking lessons. I was pretty certain I could figure this all out on my own. Not necessarily the most effective choice. And so he's number one. I remember when I was about 17 or 18, someone introduced me to Al Di Meola.
Right.
And that totally messed my mind up. It's like, what? Because the speed and accuracy, and also to me at the time, the music seemed so complex, right?
Yeah.
So that really opened my mind to, okay, playing guitar is a lot more than I thought it was. Yeah. So I'd put those two really up top. Santana. Totally love Santana's heart, soul, passion. He's prepared to play a little messy, to let his true spirit shine through the instrument. Yeah.
There do seem to be kind of two streams of guitar playing. On the one hand, there's those who kind of pursue that technical proficiency, and then on the other side, there are those who do more sound effects, kind of atmospheric sort of music.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I think, the guitar is an amazing instrument because with effects, an instrumentalist can create an amazing array of sonic landscapes on the guitar, right? Or the guitar player can be, equally more driven to explore the guitar in its rawness, so an electric guitar, one cable and an amp, right? And then create their self-expression through that means.
That's right.
Both are totally engaging and, equally valid and valuable.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for guitarists out there?
Oh, yeah. Obviously set goals and pursue them, and be certain that you pay attention to the journey. So you may want to learn, I don't know, an Eddie Van Halen solo, right? Or a Metallica tune, or some guitar line that's like, man, when I get that, I'll be like there, And don't disregard the process of getting there. And also in that, really, my advice is make the decision to become a craftsman, not an imitator. Become an artist that, understands the way music goes together on the instrument, and that will become an innovator on the instrument. Doesn't mean not learning someone else's song or someone else's, licks, because that's a valuable way of discovering what your voice might be. And there's a lot more to it than learning licks and then figuring out how they go together, right? There's another whole level of depth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have heard it said that, or some guitarists say that you are almost better off learning things the way you do. So if you try to figure out a lick, not look at a tab or sheet music or anything, but try to figure out your own way, and then you can still bring your originality to it.
Totally cool. Yeah, I love it. I think about like Jeff Healey. You know, when I saw him play, it was I think his first album was out. It was before he really hit big. And I saw him play in a little club I think it's been torn down downtown in Calgary. And there was this guy with this guitar sitting in his lap, facing up, kind of like a lap steel, right? And he's playing with all 5 of his fingers because he could press flat straight down on the frets. Yeah. And he's playing the most amazing blues guitar, you know? And then when he really got into it, he figured out a way to get this guitar up, and he'd stand up and the guitar would be against him and he'd be standing and he'd still be playing with all 5 fingers, you know? And man, he never saw how to play the guitar, right? No one could show him. And I imagine that somehow he started learning on his own because there wasn't someone to say, no, you don't do it that way. Right. And what a glorious player.
No kidding.
No kidding. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Daniel's Heart CD.
Oh, my. That CD was birthed out of a leadership seminar through Clemmer & Associates. I was in their 4th level called Sam Camp, and Sam Camp is all about taking personal growth concepts that we'd learned over the year prior and then applying them to real world goals. And really, I was part of a small group through this process of about 12 weeks. And I would have never, ever considered that as a goal, creating my own solo acoustic guitar CD. I didn't feel that I had the potential or the talent, honestly, in me to deliver that CD. It didn't even occur to me to think about it. And my small team really pressed me when I was searching for a goal. Yeah. And when I hit upon this idea of a CD, they totally latched onto it. And by the time my goal was set, I had 9 weeks to complete this. It was write, record, manufacture, and sell at least 1,000 CDs in 9 weeks. And I did that. The CD really surprised me because as I started to record, I didn't go in with a plan of creating songs because I thought to myself, I've got 9 weeks. I could spend all 9 weeks attempting to write 10 good songs. Yeah. So I went into it with the attitude, okay, I'm going to trust God to show up and I'm simply going to start playing. And after the first night, I recorded 3 tunes. And when I listened back to them the following day, it blew my mind. I listened to the tracks and went, who is that guitar player? So, yeah, Daniel's Heart is a lot about, if you look at the cover, it's like a flaming heart that's been dug out of the earth. And it's a lot about me discovering how to remove my own insecurities or the words that others had spoken over my life, and to actually step into a place of taking a risk and seeing what I had inside me and how God would also hold me up and support me. And Daniel's Heart is an amazing testimony to that whole process.
Would you say there's some other big takeaways from working on that project?
Oh, yeah. One is understanding that the way God, and like those of you that are Christians and understand the Holy Spirit, you'll get this. It could be talked about as intuition also from someone from another perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about the Holy Spirit flowing through me, right? And so understanding that because I put time in on the instrument and have become a craftsman, what I now know is often called a master musician in the world of Christianity, that I've kind of created myself being the instrument, being capable of playing the movements, right, the muscle
Mm-hmm.
movements, and having a vocabulary in my being. And now, after learning how to allow the Holy Spirit to flow through me in prayer and in sort of letting the Holy Spirit guide me through my life, this album is actually entirely Holy Spirit driven. So I know that I can show up and put on my guitar and play, and the Holy Spirit will show up, and something new and fresh will come out that is meant to inspire and honor and love on whoever's listening at the time.
It's really cool. Talk about Hollywood Flower.
Oh man, Hollywood Flower's cool. I went down to Los Angeles to play a show, and part of the deal was that I was given a place to stay for almost as long as I wanted. And I decided to go down a week early and get to know like LA a little bit. I was staying in Hollywood, so mainly in Hollywood. And the first morning I woke up, I didn't even, I hadn't even had coffee or anything. I was in my pajamas, and I was in this 1-bedroom suite of a converted garage. And I picked up my guitar and started to play. And the sound that came off the instrument and the kind of ideas, the melodies, I was like, oh, this is new. And I decided right then and there I was going to use the week to record the next album. And it's much the same as Daniel's Heart in that it's not, the songs weren't preconceived.
Yeah.
Each song was conceived in a different moment. And then there were 3 or 4 takes recorded. Usually the last take was the keeper. And this, as with Daniel's Heart, there were no editing at all.
Right.
What the listener hears is what I played. And I decided that I wanted, after recording the first song in the suite, that I wanted this album to be more inspired by engaging in the environment and the people around me. So I headed off with my portable recorder and my guitar and found myself recording all over the place. At one of the small airports, I think it was the Compton Airport, and then at on the top of one of the Hollywood Hills looking out over downtown. That song's called Higher. There are dogs running around my feet and joggers running by and the wind's blowing, and it's wild, I felt that in that album, that one of the things I think as an artist I had disregarded was the power of the environment and of people and circumstance to impact what was coming out of me creatively. So in Hollywood Flower, I wanted to honor that, and each of those songs is a time, a space, a moment in space and time in a particular place.
Yeah.
With me being impacted in a certain way.
That's very neat. Do you have any new projects in the works?
I do. I have a book that I'm writing, and what I've learned, I really enjoy sharing my story or little snippets of my life as I perform in concert. And people seem to really enjoy the way they come out. They're humorous, and they're also thought-provoking, and sometimes a little sad, because I come from a tragic youth, and ultimately they're about, living life with joy and love. So these stories I'm going to create a book, and and actually have a number of my life stories in a book, which I intend to have available to purchase before the end of the summer. So that's really exciting. I haven't done anything like that before.
Yeah, that's very interesting to take your creativity in a different direction.
Yeah. One of the things that got me going on writing the book too was the understanding on a couple of television interviews that I've done over the last 6 months, understanding that really the power to change or inspire others is what we have is our own story, you know? So by creating a book, my story, right, it enables me to actually share with others who may be going through similar things, or the stories may for them trigger an association, and they can go, oh, you know, I see, right? I see how that impacted you, and I can kind of see now why I'm impacted this way, right?
Air Canada selected you as an emerging Canadian artist. How did that come about?
That's cool. Yeah. Well, I'm part of a website called Sonic Bids, and it's a really great opportunity for musicians to meet music users, be it festivals, gigs in clubs, or airlines. Air Canada's not the only one who's doing that kind of a program.
Right.
So when I saw that opportunity, I submitted my press kit, and was contacted fairly soon after, and I was selected among, I don't know how many others. I never did find out. I believe there might have been 10 or 12 other Canadian artists, as well as myself. And we found ourselves on play on the Air Canada in-flight for the fall. Yeah. That was really cool.
Yeah. And your music has also earned you several awards. So was this something that came about fairly organically, or did it come to you as a surprise?
Yeah. Well, the first award was a total surprise. Vivian and I my wife Vivian and I had been part of a R&B funk band for a couple of years. And we started writing tunes collectively. And we made a decision that, let's say, I wrote a tune that was pretty much done, and I brought it into the band to workshop it, that we would all then be put on put as songwriters, because we really felt that, the whole process of being in that band was stirring up whatever creative energies in whoever in the band. And so we all felt like we wanted to share that with each other. And we wrote a number of songs whose Zoe Theodorou had started to pen. She was our main vocalist. And after Soul Body finished, Zoe went on to pursue her own solo career and recorded her own solo album. And she recorded 4 or 5 of the songs that we'd written as Soul Body. And she submitted those for the GMA Covenant Awards in 2008, I believe. Yeah, 2008. And the one song won for Best Jazz Blues Song of the Year.
Right.
Yeah. And that was a total surprise, because it's like, I'm a what? Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Very cool.
Daniel's Heart, and one of the songs on it was nominated for Best Instrumental Album of the Year in 2009, and one of the songs, Best Instrumental Song of the Year. So that was exciting. I did not win, but Hollywood Flowers up, and I'm looking forward to having another go at that award.
Excellent.
Yeah.
If there was one piece of advice you could pass on to struggling musicians, what would it be?
Struggling is optional. No, totally. I'll talk about it in 2 levels. One is the kind of a spiritual and emotional level, and struggling is totally optional. When I learned to take a step back from my environment, circumstance, results, all of those things, and to understand that they did not define me, right? That they simply were the outcome of a number of choices.
Yeah.
Then really, truly, I understood that suffering is optional, right? Because I can get all tied up with a result and create a bunch of meanings to a simple fact that have, in fact, in the past caused me a great deal of emotional stress, right? And I'm not saying that doesn't happen anymore. It happens a lot less frequently. And if it does happen, I notice it a lot sooner and can make a shift,
Right.
and step back and go, okay, so what can I do to get a different result next time, right? And then, to sort of speak about struggling in the sense of a musician that is determined to make a lifestyle, to make a career choice.
Yeah.
Really, the first thing I would say is relationship, which is almost a contradiction, given that to become a craftsperson, it requires a lot of time, usually in the closet, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Wood shedding.
Definitely.
And the greatest guitar player who ever lived would never be known if he didn't get out of the closet and meet some people.
That's right.
Yeah. So go to the jams, meet the industry reps, get to understand the music business. It may not, understanding the way people perceive the business as working in that moment and how it works for them may not be what works for another. The important thing is kind of learning the landscape, right? That you as a musician are going to be traversing, and seeing what works for others can be really beneficial to deciding how you're going to, pursue that. And really a great deal about being successful in the music business is unfortunately a lot about the business.
Right.
Right. And yes, if you want to become a craftsman, which I would recommend, then there's a lot of in the music side too. So marrying those two together.
Sound advice. As an artist, it can be a challenge to manage one's daily tasks and creative efforts. What are your thoughts on this?
Still working on it. Yes. Balance. It's not always, for me, I don't know that I'm the one to give advice, because I am in a place currently where I am reaching out into relationships more. And so I can be easily distracted on Facebook or email or Twitter, or, keeping in touch with relationships that I value. So I have a feeling I've swung a little bit one way, a little further than I will end up. I would say, though, setting goals, like getting good at setting goals and then learning how to be held accountable, how to hold yourself accountable, and perhaps how to create a support group that also stands with you with your intention and will step in and say, well, wait a minute, you said, you were going to do this.
Right.
And, ultimately, if you go to school to study music, that's kind of what you're doing. You're setting yourself in the middle of an accountability group.
Yeah.
Right. And they're even the goal setting group. So if you're at, on your own, creating your art and you're, building your skill, then how do you create that for yourself?
Right. The music industry has been changing a lot over the last decade or two. How would you say that it has changed, and where do you see it going?
That's really great. Well, today, selling a bunch of, having a major hit or selling a lot of CDs doesn't really make you the money, or perhaps it's better to say it's not really happening
right
to the degree it did, because of the digital downloads and the way music is available for very, very inexpensive or free. The way people are treating music, because most people are treating it as hey, I just bought this album, I'll put it on I'll burn you a CD, so it's, it's not making the kind of money from album sales back to the artist. It seems like being placed, having your music placed somewhere is more important to bringing money in. For instance, I'm with a company called Organic Music Library, and they're relatively new, and they're looking at taking music that is, again, kind of live off the floor, recorded. It's not highly produced, and perhaps with an emphasis on acoustic, and placing it into retail locations and businesses, films, commercials. So once an artist gets their music placed in an interesting and a successful placement, that can mean a lot of income.
What are your thoughts on social media like Twitter and Facebook?
They're kind of fun. And I would say that I believe there are ways to use those to create relationship that is monetized, so making money.
Yeah.
I have not yet really mastered that skill. I spent last year building my Facebook page, and I have now 1,300 or 1,400 people on it, when I had no Facebook page just over a year ago.
Right.
So that was sort of my goal, right, last year, was to get 1,000 people, and I did. Now my goal is to figure out what to do next. And there do seem to be some really great programs, like online resources to teach people how to, how to take those Facebook clients or, friends and turn them into people who are going to be actively interested in what you do and purchasing product or, forwarding your information to others.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I think we already know your answer on this, but how important would you say it is to network?
Relationship. The thing about networking is that if you come from a place of beginner's mind, so showing up without an expectation almost, right? It seems a little bit of a paradox to when I say have your goals set and, be prepared to be held accountable.
Right.
And now I'm telling you to show up and network without an agenda. And the reason is that if you come up from a place of beginner's mind, you'll be open to however an opportunity presents itself, right? Because oftentimes, I know for myself, I've thought the outcome would have to look a certain way. And many times the outcome never came. And I can only imagine how many times the universe or God was actually attempting to get me the outcome, and I couldn't see it because I was so wrapped up in how I thought it should look. So in networking, it's not about getting people to do what you want, right? It's more about finding out what gets those people going, right? And what is going on in their lives and getting excited about them, right? Because if I learn how to serve them, how to show up from a sort of a place of being a servant, what can I do for you, right? What's going on? Oh, you got a business. Are you doing like commercials? Oh, do you need some music?
Right.
I'd love to help you out with music. Who knows, right? How that looks. Oh, you've got a benefit that you're sponsoring. Cool. Do they have any music plan for the event? Do you know? Oh, well, maybe I could give that organizer a call and see if they could use something. Right. So if I go in heavy with agenda, I'll start disregarding people because they don't fit my agenda.
Yeah.
And what important opportunities or discussions will I, never hear?
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Would you say it's important to have good representation as an artist, or is it possible to do a lot of the work on your own?
Yeah, great question. I believe that partnering is a really important part of becoming successful. So representation, I believe, is shifting because more so now artists are empowered, able, and almost expected to create the product themselves. Whether that means you hire the studio and the engineer and the musicians, or you put together your own project studio and learn the craft of recording, and then you're bringing that. You're usually bringing your product to someone who has the means of getting it somewhere further, right? With some kind of promotional machine. I mean, I like to think of partnering in a much broader sense. So I'm partnering with the company that does my graphic design. I'm partnering with the company that does my manufacturing.
Yeah.
Right. Those are all relationships, and they're all crucial. What was the question?
Important to have good representation, or can a lot of the work be done on your own?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I believe that because relationship is so important, that a lot of times, in my own experience, I've often thought of my success was over there. It wasn't right here where I am, right? If I could only get someone over there to then see how great I am,
right,
and then put their machine behind it, I would be successful. When in fact, like right here in my immediate community is opportunity after opportunity after opportunity.
Right.
So I really believe that there's a self-representing one into their own immediate community is really important in building local relationships and a support system, right? Because as an artist, it can easily feel awfully lonely.
Right.
Especially I'm flying to Toronto next week for the first time to play a solo guitar showcase, part of a conference, or next month. And, I'm going out there all alone. And I know I have a ton of people back here that love me, appreciate me. So I'm going forward with all of that support. Yeah.
I think that's a lot of terrific information. So if people want to get in touch with you, how could they go about doing that?
What's your website? No.
My website, www.daw-music.com. Click on podcast and you'll see the show notes for this episode.
Well, absolutely. You know what? On my website, you can email me. My cell phone number's on there. You can call me. Really, how can I be of service to you? That would be my statement. So www.danielguymartin.com.
Excellent. And that'll be in the show notes as well. So thank you very much for being part of the podcast. Are you going to play a little something for us?
Yeah, I would love to.
Excellent. Is it going to be something familiar or something off the cuff?
Well, this is the truth of the matter is that there's very little that is off, like from the album, so to speak, because it was all spontaneous composition.
Yeah.
So what you're going to hear today will be completely inspired by the awesome surroundings of your studio.
Excellent. Look forward to hearing it. Thanks for tuning in today. You just heard my interview with Daniel Guy Martin. The awesome guitar you heard at the beginning and at the end of the episode were, of course, courtesy of Daniel. So I just wanted to say thank you again for being on the podcast. Daniel did mention that in addition to his book, he is working on a third recording project, which is quite exciting. So as usual, I'd like to hear what you think of this podcast. Feel free to leave some comments in the show notes, and you can do that by going to www.daw-music.com and clicking on the podcast button, and that should bring you to a page which will link to the podcast blog. If that sounds complicated, you can also send me an email, comments@daw-music.com. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm David Andrew Wiebe. You've been listening to the David Andrew Wiebe Interviews and Music Business Podcast, broadcasting from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.